you know, it makes me so excited every time we get to like be together and stuff. I'm like, yes, we doing grown ass women stuff today. And it's bright outside. We have never done grown ass women in the daytime. Normally it's in the evening when we got a glass of wine, but I think y'all already got glasses. I'm still working on tea. So anyways, hey y'all.
Hey.
So did y'all see the message? It was so cool. Dee said that she has sent grown ass women to one of her homies, and he was like, okay, I could see it. I see what y'all doing over there. But he said we need to be more considerate of the audience. So we're gonna do that today too, okay? We're gonna be considerate of the audience.
Has the audience been defined?
Girl, whoever listening, but I like the fact that he felt like he was eavesdropping a little bit, because that, you know, that feels a little bit more.
That's exciting.
That's us just, you know, vibing out. And no, we haven't defined who the audience. I guess it's whoever's listening.
I like that.
The other grown ass people out there, or maybe the young people trying to be grown ass. I don't know.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. A little bit.
Moscato at their parents.
You should have. Yeah, we're gonna find some white Zinfandel for the.
No, we ain't finding no white Zinfandel. I don't even know if they make those grapes anymore. Those grapes, like, we ain't finding no white
grapes
in the box or the bag. One of the two.
Oh, there is the box one. We could do that. We could do that. But do we really want to compromise our livers and our esophagus?
It's a prop.
We got at least a good 40 more years ahead of us. I just don't know if it's worth the burn of the throat.
You could do a photo shoot on top of a wine box of white Zinfandel. Talk about
that.
Grown.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm glad y'all have y'all wine. I'm still working on my tea, so I'll probably be amped up while y'all chilling out. So y'all just tell me, like, LaNail, you doing too much. Bring it down a little bit. I'll bring it down a little bit. Not that has ever worked, but y'all do be telling me I be doing too much. So we got a couple topics we're going to be talking about today. Religion in love and life, honey. Religion. Oh, Jay, that's good too, because I think in the last Grown Ass Woman, we were talking about what it means for you growing up as a PK, right? I think we had talked on that a little bit, being in the church. Colorism and what that means to you. Y'all who are listening in, we had to have a pre-talk before we even had this talk, because we was like, is everybody gonna be okay? Because it still be triggering. You know what I'm saying? Be like this, I don't know, because you know how you sometimes you describe people, you be like, you know, that light skin one over there, or that brown skin one over there, or that dark one over there. I still got trauma from the 80s when they was calling me an African booty scratcher. Y'all remember how derogatory that was? So derogatory. Now I be trying to be African. I be like, I'm African. My kids be like, sit your Black American behind down. You are from California. Stop with the jokes. And then the last one, Jesus, protecting Black women, right on the heels of Will Smith and Jada and Chris Rock. We're gonna end with that because I have
the world.
What'd you say, Dee?
The slap heard across the world.
Child, and felt by those two, honey. Yes. So let's start off with religion and love. I guess even before that, we should say our names and stuff again for people who are, that's important, right? I'm just making assumptions that everybody knows who we are. So let's go ahead and start. Nick, you want to go first?
I am Nikki Wood. I say that with pride. I have always wanted to be Nikki Wood. I am Nikki Wood.
Okay. Dee?
Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, sorry, Jay.
Okay. I'm Jonai Morris Carr.
Oh, you sound like the old elegant ladies from back in the day. I am Jonai Morris Carr. Okay, come on with the sip of the white Zinfandel.
Right. With the shriveled grapes.
My parents, hey y'all, what my parents had at the house. It was either this or pizza, and so I chose.
Don't be throwing your parents under the bus no more. And Dee.
I am Deana Kennedy.
has a birthday coming up real soon. I would sing for you, but that's not good. We'll leave that to Jonai because I don't need to be busting out nobody's eardrums with my off tune singing and dancing. So Jay, you got to sing a tune at the end for it. Get ready. Get ready. Okay.
She got on the church pearls.
Look. Let's start religion in love and life. Nick, I think you brought that up. Tell me what you were thinking about that in that moment when you were like, let's talk about religion. Let's talk about what that means in love and life.
And love and life. So I was thinking about a lot of things in that moment, like, ooh, what's relevant? What's pushing right now, right? Like, so initially I was thinking about how that appears in your like love relationships, right? Whether that's marriage or family, and how, depending upon coming from a Christian background or Baptist background, the whole hierarchy of it's supposed to be God, if you're married, spouse, then kids, then you, right? And how does that work? Having been married twice, that order doesn't work, right? Because the reality of it is that if I'm not right, how is everything else going to be right, right? And so I've actually talked to some very religious people about this, and they're like, well, at least if your, from their perspective, relationship with God or your spirituality, let's say that, your spirituality, no matter what you believe in, if your spirituality is right, then you can kind of, they're saying you'll already be right. So you put that first, and then you're already right for those other relationships. But I go back to the analogy of if I'm on a ship and it gets blown up or whatever, and I'm on this little plank like Titanic, and I got my spouse and my child who is not of age and has not lived the life I live, my child's not going to be the option. One of us got to go. And I don't know, depending upon how I feel about you that day, it's not going to be my child. But according to the Baptist or Christian faith and possibly some others, your spouse is supposed to come first. So how do you leverage that? So yeah,
hopefully we married a spouse who believe the same thing, so I could just stay on that plank, right?
That
So
part, right?
they gonna choose me, I'm gonna choose them, and because they first, I'm gonna defer to what they said, which means I'm gonna be on that plank with my kid. Thank you for the sacrifice.
How about we take turns treading water? We shouldn't have got on this ship till all y'all can swim anyway.
Bound to do that.
Yes. What are y'all thoughts on it? Because I think all of us grew up in the church, and my experience with the church was, after my mom tried to get her life together, child. I don't think it's together now, but she had her things, right? And afterwards, we got really invested in church and religion, which worked well for me because I think I already had a spiritual relationship with God as a kid before we were formally introduced to church in that way. My great grandfather was a preacher. We called him Preacher Daddy. So there would definitely be times where I would go to church with him and my great grandmother, who we called Big Mama, but we didn't get into church until my mom got sober. And then when I went to go live with my dad wasn't really into church. So I used to go to church by myself as a teenager. Like I would be waking myself up, getting myself to church, asking my dad to take me to church, and he would go to the gym. And then when the church was over, he'd come pick me up. And it was a whole thing. And then of course, as a young adult, I was in church a lot, like heavily in church. So I definitely know that indoctrination, Nikki. I don't necessarily believe that's one of the things that I ascribe to, though. Like, I don't think that, I think that if we all have our own individual relationships with God, then neither one of us have to be participating in a hierarchical kind of situation, but recognizing that there's going to be times when I may be on top and my partner may not have the focus. And then there'd be times where my partner is on top and I am in the supportive role. And that comes in all decision-making processes. So if we're talking about a car, or we're talking about the children, or we're talking about something else, it's really a matter of who has more experience and who has a clearer understanding and who's been praying about the situation a bit more too. And that's how we kind of move. So I don't believe in hierarchical, but when I was dating men, they definitely believed in the hierarchical position. And I was like, maybe that was a reinforcer of how it just wasn't gonna work for me, because I didn't want to fight. I was like, you not even doing everything right. But we don't even have to go. That's another grown ass woman, maybe for the nighttime. I don't like, you ain't, boy, if you don't, you know what? Go ahead, Dee and Jonai, because I'm gonna get myself in trouble right now.
I partially agree with you on the hierarchy. I will tell you the best piece of advice I've ever heard on that, as a Christian woman who is unmarried with no children. My pastor's wife once said that the man is the head of the household, but the woman is the neck. The neck turns the head. I thought that was a beautiful representation of the Christian hierarchy, if you will, as the wife is the influencer, is that, even if the husband is thinking one thing and trying to act a different way, the wife is in a position where she can be like, well, no, this is not right, or I have more experience here, or this is the way to go. And the husband changes the path according to that. Now, grew up in church, definitely Pentecostal, Kojic. I'm sorry, guys, I did call y'all out, but that was my life. I have to say that as an adult, I am more spiritual than like religious, like you guys were saying earlier, and being led by the Spirit, and the Spirit that, that speaks to me and that guides me. So a lot of those denominational or religious kind of things that people lay out, I leave them up to interpretation of my spirit, and making sure that I have that relationship with God, and that God is speaking to me, and that I'm hearing from him. So those are my comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is I do think that spirituality has a major role in relationships, the formation of the relationship, the sustainability of the relationship, and even if there needs to be a termination of the relationship. I do think that those are conversations to be had with God, because I think the people that are in our life is not by happenstance. I think that, that God and their ancestors and their spiritual guides brought them to us, and we were brought to them, and for whatever that reason and purpose is. And sometimes we need to seek wisdom outside of ourselves to find out why we're in a particular situation with somebody. And if it's us that's causing the conflict, or if it's them that's causing a conflict, and even how we, resolve certain things. So I think that spirituality has to be in the religion or in the relationship. I don't know about religion per se, but go ahead, Jay. Right. Oh, sorry, Dee. Sorry.
Go, Jay.
You all know that I'm a PK. My dad's a preacher. And I really think that religion is just a means for control. I think it's just another way to govern people. And of course, I grew up, in the church, and I thoroughly enjoyed church. I had a great time. I met some good people. Some of my greatest friends are from church, did all the youth group stuff, and the choirs and trips and this and that, whatever. Youth group president, all, I was, at some point it became, something that I wanted. But that's just what you're born into. And so as I got older, I always said, I'm going to go out and figure out what this means, what this actually means, and what I want to do, and how I'm going to do it. My parents never really forced me to do anything. They never said, you better stay over here. So I agree with you all regarding the spiritual part of it. I think that as long as you believe in something, then you'll be okay. I think a lot of folks teeter-tottering on these lines of what they believe in, or who they believe in, or what it means to them. A lot of times when I speak to people, because I don't know what's going on with them spiritually, I just say the universe. I hope the universe, does this for you, or, you know, ask the ancestors for what you want. And as long as you're talking and believe in something, then I'm happy for you. I don't judge. I don't feel any type of way. I don't even feel a way about church folks. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, church folks are the worst people," and you know, everybody got some shit. So
absolutely,
I don't subscribe to that. What I do like about church is the aspect of community, and that people have somewhere to go and people to talk to and someone to love them when there's nothing or no one else seemingly. So I think it's a control, but if that's what makes the world go round for you, if that's what gets you through the day, then be religious.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's almost like
Presbyterian, and they're all the same to me. The difference in the denominations is just how they do church.
right.
So, you know, whatever. You like think better at the Baptist church? Praise them.
it's spirituality versus institutional religion, right? Like, how could you be religious without being spiritual? It's like the foundation.
Nah, Nick. People be mad religious and ain't got a single bit of spirit in them.
But that's
you be
what
like,
I'm saying.
where
Then
is God?
Religious. Then they're not religious. Then what they're doing is following instructions, but they're
Which
not.
is what religion is.
Religion.
Government. I mean, but honestly, so because of I was forced to go to a religious private school for many, many, many years, right? But my household was, we don't need to go to church. It's right and wrong, right? And that's more about spirituality. So for me, what I saw kind of growing up was, you know, the people that were religious and how you define what being religious is and following the doctrine, following, to your point, the instructions, were spiritual people, but the other ones weren't. To me, they were just following the words, but they weren't really spiritual. So for me, there was a separation between the two. Like, I see your point. It is, right? You can't be religious and not follow what your religion outlines as how you should be living your life, right? But there has to be something inside where it's not just you following these steps versus you believing in it and really like manifesting that. That's spirituality to me, like to manifest those instructions so that it really does, like there's no faking it. It's it's who you are, right? Like, you have to be spiritual to really truly be a really honestly religious person, not the ones, to Jonai's point, where you talk about, oh my gosh, the church people, the church folks, because they don't manifest what they talk about on Sunday or in Bible studies. They live in two separate lives versus showing up in a spiritual way 100% of the time.
So the church folks, they're just there for a good time.
Sorry.
I was thinking about that the other day, because there's parts of church, and I'm aligning church with religion because of my roots in, you know, Christian religion, right? And where we worship is church. But this could apply to, I think, anybody in their religious and their faith. But I do miss church. You know, I do miss the rituals that come with church. I miss, you know, being in a congregation and everybody is praying, right? And there's like this unified prayer, and the chills that come over my body when I realize that, if not 100%, you know, 75 or 50% of the people are focused on the same thing in that moment, that unity. There she go with the white ziff. And then I miss the songs, right? There's still songs. I don't know if you guys are watching Bel Air, but they had Carlton singing one of my absolute favorite songs. He saw the best in me. That song makes me cry every single time. You know, I think about the lowest times in my life where God still saw me, where I felt like I was rejected and abandoned by everybody. So I definitely love and appreciate what comes with the purity of the design of the Christian religion. You know, thinking about what Jesus was creating at that time. And I love that. It's the other stuff that gets a little bit convoluted. It's the interpretations that are not always spiritually led. It's
Right.
that church is supposed to be the safe space, but people talking about you behind your back, and that's a reflection of regular community and life. But if I'm going someplace seeking security and I'm being forced with something else, it makes it a little hard. So, but I do miss church, and a lot. And there's many moments where I'm grieving that I'm not as active in a church, and I just haven't decided what to do with that yet. I end up going to my altar and spending more time down there with God and my ancestors, and in community with those who've come before me and still guide me. And so I do think that spirituality has a role in both love and life, and still not sure if religion does. I miss it for the rituals. I miss it for some other things. So
Yeah, the music is all. Every time I go to church, it's the music.
mm-hmm.
It's not the pastor, the preacher, the minister, the reverend, whatever you want to. It's never what they're saying. It's always the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's the music. I do love hearing the word, and I don't know necessarily if I think it's the interpretation of the scripture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's right or wrong, of course you're believing the person who's giving the message, regardless, no matter some form or whatever it is. And so when the pastor, like my dad, can life to what's being said in the scripture, can interpret it in such a way that you actually understand, that's everything to me. And my dad watches a lot of TV. He can tell you about every show, every social, everything, more than. But he said he's into this stuff because it helps him relate to people. So and I totally get it. Like you gotta know what's going on and what's driving people's thoughts, and what are people doing, and so much sense. And so I love to hear the word. If there's that word, because you go to church sometimes and they'd be like,
sometimes it's not a word. Exactly. He ain't cracked no verse, said nothing.
You know what that's making me think about? I'm glad you brought that up, Jay, because I totally had disconnected in this moment, but I do listen to sermons quite a few times a week. I follow
good stuff.
Yeah, I follow Rick Warner, and I love his he's more of a teacher to me, but I love the things that he has to say, and he's so culturally competent too. Girl, I was worried. I was like, this white man gonna teach me right now? And that's no disrespect to the white preachers, because I used to love Joel Osteen until that stuff happened and he started locking people out of his church. But that's a great point, Jay. I do love the sermons too. I do love the sermon, and I think I didn't think about it that way because I still get filled that way by listening to, at the very least, Joel Osteen, or excuse me, Rick Warner. Oh, not Joel. Joel, we had to put you on the back burner.
But
that's go ahead.
Rick, the ones you send, the Pastor Rick ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. So you're right. So I will have to say I like them when they're relevant.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I've always looked at the word and the word given by the preacher, not his interpretation, but how the Spirit leads you to interpret it as it applies to your life and your situation. Me and my dad, again, big church goers, we would go to church, we would come home, and then we would talk about it. And he would say, what was the sermon about, Deana? And I would give him my interpretation and how it applied to my life. And he might have gotten something totally different, but the way that the word hit me and my situation and then filtered through my spirit and what God is telling me at the particular time could be something totally different than what was meant for Nikki or Jonai or LaNail. And that's, to me, the beautiful thing about the word with the Spirit, in spirit, is that it is applicable to everyone. You can't, Deana, again, I don't think it is effective to listen to the interpretation of other people because their lives are different. They're situated different. You know what I mean? And that to me is the difference between the spirit and religion.
Yeah.
I receive that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Y'all ready to jump into some colorism?
Yep,
Yeah.
interpretation was a good jump into.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh, that word is a good jump into the next one.
You know what, Dee? Then guess what? Then I'm starting with you, right? Because I'm starting with you. I do want to know, how do y'all describe y'all skin though? What words do you use? Man, and Ayana is not even here right now. Bless her heart, she out there being a boss and having the correct behaviors for adults, right? So shout out to Ayana, who will be finishing up her doctoral studies in just a few months. So freaking proud of her. So at some point, we're gonna start referring to her maybe for a whole year. It's just Dr. Malone. Let her get comfortable with it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's awesome.
But and I mentioned Ayana because she's always so good at describing people's skin colors and associating it with food. She'd be like, you know, he was a dark, he looked like Nutella. You know, he was over there looking like burnt butter. And I'd be like, what the hell? You know, what is a burnt butter? But the image shows up and I'll be like, oh, I know exactly what that skin color was. But how do you guys describe your skin colors? And then after that, I want to hear from Dee because she's so like, nah. So I want to know the deal, baby. What's y'all skin color?
I would describe myself as a caramelized brown sugar. It gets browner in the summer. I'm a little on the light side because it's April.
And Nikki and Jay? It's funny that you say you light though, Dee, but I get what you say.
Oh, check grown ass women out in July. It's gonna be
I'm gonna be burnt butter in July. No, I honestly don't. I know that I'm fair, but I don't, because people for so long have tried to tell me what complexion I am. So I have never. I'll just say I'm light skinned. Like if I have to really be specific, I'll say I'm really light skinned, but that's it. As far as I'll go. Like
right.
I know
pick a food, Nick.
If I because that makes me sad. I don't want to pick a food.
No food.
I gotta pick a food that is representative of a group of people that I don't see as being a feel-good people. If I had to pick a food that's like my complexion. So again, I've had complexion issues since I had social norm issues. So and I've never, I typically, and why I recommended it for the group as colorism is because I typically steer very far away about talking about complexion. If I see it, I don't see the shades in between brown skin and dark skin and light skin. Like how I define people as far as brown skin, people be like, they're not brown skin, they dark brown, or they're light brown. I'm like, they're brown skin. So because it's been so, I've had so many experiences of red, yellow, white girl, light skin, red bone, high yellow. It was so prevalent that it was just like, you know what's funny? What light skin privilege was actually introduced to me by this group, believe it or not.
Wow.
I didn't meet you all until 2018, but that concept, and I had to sit on it for a while because I was like, damn, you know what I mean? Like we all have our experiences with our complexions around other races, but to me, I saw just being kind of focused on your own life growing up. When you walk in a room, it's I'm too light to be Black enough, but I'm too Black to be white, right? So it was this middle. Okay, and you know, Mimi, my best friend, for those that don't know us, we talk about it all the time because she's very fair as well. Where it's like, well, I'm not dark enough to be dark, so if I try to be Afrocentric, am I doing too much? Like, girl, you almost white, which I've run into in the past. Where if I'm in corporate America with white people, I'm still Black because I'm not white enough to be white for them. So that's why I typically try to steer away from it if I can, because if I had to pick a food, it would probably be some sort of butter vanilla icing. And the fact that I have to use vanilla in there is not something that makes me feel good, right? It is who I am, And I'm not running from my ancestors because I understand who they are. And none of them going back to the greats live lives that I'm aware of, that is something that I would be ashamed of, right? But obviously there were those before them, and then coming out this fair, I lied to you not. When I was in high school, I was like, oh, I'm going to have a kid with somebody that's brown skinned because I don't want my child to be light skinned. Mm-hmm. A real thing. I don't want my child to be light skinned because I don't want them to have to go through the you're not black enough, but you're not white.
And so your baby, do you consider her light skinned?
She's brown skinned to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's Jordan, I kind of call her like this little little tropical looking Hawaiian but Jordan has a lot in her. Remember her great grandmother's Japanese, like, you know, so her father is brown skinned but has, you know, a non-traditional hair texture that's more like my mother is only like 38% black. Mm-hmm. So it's all across the board. Like we're a little, I hate to say mutts, but that's kind of how it is. We just have a whole lot going on the grandparent level that just created these interesting looking things.
And what's also interesting about that is that your mom, while being 38% black, identifies as black. And as a black person, I wouldn't question her I would be like, yes, of course, you know, you're black. But it's also interesting how we define ourselves in those ways. Jay, how do you describe your color?
I was trying to remember what I wrote in a chat one day. It was good. And I just
it was good. I'm gonna find it.
I might have to go do a search in the chat. But on the spot, I mean, I would say, so I mean, sometimes I say I'm brown skinned, sometimes I say I'm dark skinned. I think most times I call myself dark skinned. And I love my complexion. I actually just had this conversation with my wife the other day, and I don't know how it came up, but I was telling her, you know, back when dark skin wasn't popular,
the 80s and 90s and any time before then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just remember being like, you know, I wish I was light skinned. I remember saying I wish I was some other things, but not light skin. I've always been okay with my complexion. I love the way that I look in the summer. And I know I always said I love being dark skinned because it hides your blemishes. But if I have to pick a food,
what you put in the chat if you want me to read it.
Oh, what, you found it, Dee?
Mm-hmm. You found the chat?
Yes. I am dark chocolate with cinnamon notes, inspired tresses to the shoulder, giving midday NYC in a long coat, baggy realness, and Chelsea booted.
Yes. Yes. I think the context of that day we were describing what we look like. That was from your job, right, Dee?
Yeah, I was in a D&I webinar one day, and this beautiful woman came up and she described her complexion, given all this food, and it was just so inspiring. I jumped on the chat and I was like, ladies, this just happened to me, and it was just everything. I loved it.
What did I say?
I loved it. Let me see.
It was probably
you said, I am mahogany brown woman with longish coiled hair wrapped in the essence of my ancestors and styled in locks that represent my personal values. I wear spectacles for the need and art, but ultimately to increase all aspects of literal and figurative vision. Today, I am in orange shirt while I prepare to harvest the crops of my personal and professional investments.
All right.
And let me find Ayana.
That sounds like my nerdy ass.
And Ayana, for those who did not know, she said, I am a salted caramel latte with witchcraft hair and dimples that dance with delight and mischief. Doesn't it
On
just
delight and
beautiful
mischief.
representation of Ayana?
Especially when she starts off with the witchcraft. I was like, of course, right? Like that is
The mischief. It was the mischief for me.
that's her too. Our Scorpio. My God. I love her. I think that's the description of myself. I don't know if I compare myself to food often, but I do see myself as mahogany, which is why my Instagram is mahogany, which is why the candle that's burning in my office right now says mahogany. And that also to me connects to that wood, and I'm an earthy person, right? Like my earth sign is very clear. So that's how I kind of see myself. This is the lightest that me and Megs were talking about it recently. This is the lightest that I think I've been in a long time, just because we normally vacation in the winter time too. So because we did a vacation last winter, I don't carry the extra melanin with me. And I describe myself generally as dark skin. Some people will call me brown skin, and I consider myself dark, and I like that. I like what that means for me and the power that it has for me. I like the fact that many of my ancestors, from their perspective, from what I think their perspective was, they were rejected because of it, and I get to celebrate it, right? And so I feel like I get to carry a torch that they didn't. I get to create a torch or light a torch of something that they created but didn't get to have pride in. But it was interesting because I think we saw, what was the Harriet Tubman movie that came out a couple years ago? Was it just called Harriet?
I think it was called Harriet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we watched it, and me and Nick were talking about it afterwards, because I was like, yeah, my people were out in the fields. And I think with banter, and we could talk about that too, I think in friend groups, there becomes a light banter around skin color. Although, funny that I'm thinking about it now, I never hear my light-skinned friends say anything about my skin color. But I say things about, ooh, I'm wrong. Ooh, I'm feeling it right now. Because I think I said something like, I would be my people out in the field. And Nick, you said, well, my people would be in the house, but they be the ones poisoning massa. She was like, and I was like, yeah, we all had our role. We all had our role, right? But it was in that moment where I understood how being light skin could also be helpful for the movement, right? Because oftentimes the image of the movement is Black people, like dark skinned people rather, excuse me, and white people who were allies, right? You don't rarely see light skinned people as part of the movement. But it was a powerful point. But so Dee put herself off the video for a minute because she probably knew I was coming for her to ask her what her thoughts were. But tell me, Nick, tell me a little bit about why this one showed up for you today, and you wanted us to kind of talk about it as grown-ass women.
Well, it was more of I think colorism always shows up, right? It's a matter of whether it's consciously showing up or subconsciously showing up. It was actually an experience you mentioned recently when we worked out that had it on my mind, right? And how people see us, your Wisconsin experience.
Oh, yeah.
And just how people see us. And so that's what made me have colorism. It had been on my mind, like, wow, not just how we see ourselves, but how other people see us as well. If I was going for an interview and there was another woman in there that looked the same, shaped the same, talked the same, but was a darker complexion, but it was a white company or white, job, they would probably feel more comfortable with me than they would with her, right? So it just, then I thought about, if that were me in these other positions and experiences that some of us had, would I have received the same treatment? Now, maybe because my hair being shaved off, maybe, but if not, or if that was not noticeable because that's more of an ethnic hairstyle, then I probably wouldn't have. I might have got the same question of, what are you doing? But I probably wouldn't have. So, that had just kind of been on my mind when I was thinking about things for us to talk about, colorism, not just what we see, but what other people see as well.
Mm-hmm. I have a topic within the topic to bust open, maybe. And I believe this is colorism.
Busted wide open. Oh no.
Right, I was thinking the
that
same
wasn't
thing.
the
Okay.
okay. That's my Pandora station. It's called Busted Wide Open. Y'all could judge me if you want to. I don't care, but
mine's
okay.
Hot Girl
Judged.
Summer.
Because I'm a nan. Because I'm a nan.
Nan.
Go ahead, Jay. Busted Wide Open. Tell them bring it back.
Oh, go ahead. Bust it wide open. Go
So,
ahead.
and now y'all stop me if this is not colorism, and then this could be a different topic for a different day. In the lesbian community, and I probably will lose some friends over this. When we start trying to have kids.
Oh shit. Hold on.
Can I say what I was gonna say first? Why you?
Yeah, because Jay.
I know where you going, Jay. We talked about this, I think, offline.
Okay, maybe another time. Maybe after some whiskey.
Or you could say it and maybe we process it in the girl. That's risky. Because you know the lesbians, they be out there now.
Okay. Stand
Go
by.
ahead.
Go ahead, G.
Cancel culture.
It's not just y'all. It's not just y'all. I have caveats to that story on the straight eight side. Okay. But what I was gonna say is I was raised in a family that is not a proudly, expressively Afrocentric. And I can remember being young, and my aunt, who's a hairstylist who I love dearly, she favored someone who was the opposite of me. You know, she was more like Nikki, you know, and it was about the hair, and it was about the body shape, and it was about, you know, just she was cute and everything because she had this little petite body and all this curly hair. And it really changed the way I looked at my lighter skinned sisters. And I'll say that on camera right now. Nikki, you are probably one of the first lighter skinned sisters that I ain't been looking at like, she thinks she's better than me. And that's because we have a relationship, and I've heard how you were raised and how it made you feel. And I never looked at it from that perspective because we're 80s babies, right? Mm-hmm. The media portrayed darker skinned women as not as good. If you go back to 80s videos, you won't see a dark skinned woman in sight. You're pressed to see a light skinned Black woman.
Or if you do, you only see her from the back. If you do, you only see her from the back. And, hey, Ma! You only see her from the back, and they're showing like her rump, right? Like rump shaker.
Right. Right. But I mean, if you go back further than that, I mean, we're just not even in the picture. So that had a lot to do with how I perceived myself. Now, on the flip side, I also come from a family who is, in kind words, a little bougie. We thought we was better than everybody, right? So we have this like uppity presence, but it's not because we are dark skinned and beautiful and that we love ourselves. It's because we're smart and we're articulate and we're this and we're that. It's all about the mind, right? And not about what you look like. And I feel like as I was being raised, I was always kind of presented to or raised to kind of advocate what was in my head versus what I looked like. So as a young adult, you know, when Black was in style, you started getting all this attention and you don't know what to do with it. It left me as an older adult in conflict with my feelings about people of different shades and different ethnicities, and how really it boils down to how they felt about me, because I had this self-deception of what they were thinking about me because of media.
Mm.
Wow, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I relate to that 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Even questioning myself, I was talking with my son earlier, and I told Nick while we were logging in that my son, who looks very much like me, you guys know, and looks absolutely 100% like my dad, we were listening to that Cardi B song where she said, and they used to say I was ugly. You know, I think, you know, I should be a rapper on the side, by the way. But
no.
Damn.
Anything past the 2-step would kill you.
I gave it a right.
Our June grown ass woman is gonna talk about what happens when your friends deflate your dreams. Okay.
So we were being transparent.
Deferred.
Oh, I'm glad, yeah.
And he was like, and I told him, like, when I was growing up, I 100% thought I was ugly, like 100%. And he felt so sad for me. And I was talking about, my acne and my, no matter how thin I was, and even now, y'all know, no matter how thin I get, my belly is disproportionate to my breast. These breasts are just small little things. And this belly is just, you know what? All y'all know what the hell I'm talking about. You look up. Okay, that's not the point. Okay, anyway. So I thought I was ugly, and my skin complexion has something to do with that too, because it was also the 80s and 90s and all the little, all the little boys and girls. There wasn't a whole bunch of open lesbians when I was growing up, but always preferred light-skinned people. And I was like, well, what does that mean for me? And yes, to Dee's point, I was always encouraged to be super smart and to challenge myself and my intellect. And so I always felt good in those ways, but was not a pretty girl. No, that wasn't the description of me. It was also the 80s and 90s where we was perming our hair all the time, and the new growth. Y'all don't know? Yeah, okay, y'all being brand new. When the new growth.
Even got relaxers.
What'd you say?
I even got relaxers back then.
You got relaxed. See that? You see my ignorance just expose itself. You see?
Man.
Don't let a good flat eye fool you. Let this thing grow. You wave patterns coming. Don't let it grow out. No, I used to get relaxers. I didn't stop until like 2016.
Yeah. And I think, we talked about it historically. We understand how skin complexion ravishes through our community as Black people, but it's also in so many other communities because of colonization. Oh, yeah. The folks in the country of India, so though true Indians, not what we be calling Native Americans, but true Indians, their colorism is horrible. Even folks who are all homogeneously relatively the same complexion, like people in Japan or in Korea, the skin lightening creams that they have. And child, have y'all seen Young, Rich, and African on Netflix?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, the bleaching is so apparent. Like, it's one brown skinned girl on there, and everybody else, you could tell that they were born brown, but they have been bleaching themselves, like darker brown. They've been bleaching. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And
when I was overseas one time, I was in Kuwait, and a lot of them are my complexion. And I'm walking by, and they're like, a nigga. Oh. And so I said, you a nigga too.
Wow.
That Nan. It caught me off guard. It caught me off guard because I don't think I've ever really experienced like in your face racism. That wasn't even racism. I actually think that was
like they didn't know.
Yeah, they didn't know. They just heard it, and they're trying to relate. They're like, and now they're trying to sell us stuff.
Like a shout out.
They think it's a term of it is a term of endearment with each other. So they were just kind of latching on, but it caught me off guard. So I responded with, "You a nigga," like,
and I bet you laughed just like that, didn't you?
I did because I wasn't offended. I was caught off guard, So I just remembered that.
That's the beauty about who you are, though, because in that moment you laughed and threw it right back. That's one of the things I really love about you. Like, yeah, because my ass would have probably been like, who the fuck you talking to, right? Like, let's go, right? And you would have been like, LaNail, they're joking, and I'd have been like, oh,
like you wear the same shade foundation that I do, honey. And that was to the man. That was man.
See, that's interesting because when I've been out there for work, I actually feel less clear when I was younger going out the country because they're like, when whether you go to, I had worked in Sweden for a little while and they're all super white. They're either super white or not. And it's like, oh, What are you? Oh, seriously. I when my parents would take being with my dad, who's I consider him a lighter skinned Black man, but it's clear that he's Black. My mom sometimes thought she was Indian, like real Indian. But and then they'd have these two little girls that were fair skinned, light eyes, and we'd have bushy, thick hair because she didn't know what to do with it. And they looking at us like, this doesn't make sense. Like, if we were with my mom, we didn't make sense. And if we were with my dad, it was like, did he marry white women? And then you get that. Down south was the worst. Oh, it was the worst.
I'm sure.
As a kid, it was the worst. My dad would intentionally not want to go with my sister and I unless it was with my mom to see that he didn't have children with a white woman.
Mm.
Yeah, it was, oh man, it was the worst. And my sister and I mean, you could feel it, right? You could feel the tension. You could feel it. I mean, we still did stuff, and then we went to Hawaii and we went at the end of the summer when we had tans. They were really confused. Like, what the fuck? Like, what are y'all doing?
Have you all ever heard, oh, you're pretty for a dark-skinned woman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it all the time.
I heard that from one of my best friend's cousin. First of all, he was darker than me. And also his mom, I mean, she's a little lighter than me, but I still consider her a dark skinned or brown skinned woman. And we were, I mean, nice guy. We were all just shooting the shit, having conversations. And he's like, man, you are beautiful for a dark skinned woman. I said, what? That like the record player scratched, everything else was shut down. And now we had to have that conversation. So I said, what do you mean for a dark skinned woman? Like, dark skinned women aren't pretty? I said, your mama is dark skinned. And he's like, oh, no, I didn't mean it. And he's from down south, from South Carolina. And he's like, no. He's like, no, I'm just, I've always dated really light-skinned women with long hair and, we white, the look of white. And he's like, I didn't mean any harm. No, there are plenty of beautiful brown-skinned women, but that's just never been my type, and I'm trying to break down like why. And we really, really got deep into it, and he was willing to talk about it. And he didn't realize how ignorant he sounded.
Yeah.
And like real ignorance, like just don't know better.
Yeah, because he really thought he was giving you a compliment, right?
He really thought he was giving.
Yeah.
He really did.
That's how when I was dating, I would determine whether to talk to you ever again. If in the first conversation or any conversation, you called me yellow, red bone, high yellow, like, because that was common. And a lot of people, especially in my like late teens, early 20s, they didn't see the harm in saying that. You talking about the 90s. And again, like, light skin was in the 90s, especially for dudes, which was kind of weird. It was like I was dating my cousins. But anyway, it was. I was like, I want your man parts to be anyway. So, but it was that was a defining.
We grown.
If they said it, I was like, yeah, I'm never going to talk to them again. And they could have been great dudes and loved the salty, sandy. I walked off, but it was like, no.
I'm looking at these slides. I'm making a lot of edits.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Okay. but that was it. No, if they made that comment, which would be the equivalent for me of saying, oh, you pretty for a brown skinned girl or a dark skinned girl, it was like, nope. I couldn't talk to them. It's like you already know right from that comment that your mentality is no.
I'll help to the conversation of busting it wide open and tying into what Dee was talking about too, and exposing my ignorance. I definitely ascribe certain values to light-skinned people. I had thoughts around, well, they're probably, more concerned about how they look. They're probably using their looks to get certain advantages. They probably don't care about the plight of Black people because they can pass. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely ascribed certain values, like they're probably gonna be in competition. And you guys know, as much as people be like, LaNail, you're so competitive, I usually am competing with myself. So so I hate competition because I hate the energy that comes with competition, and that people are wishing for somebody to lose. But that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. But I definitely ascribe certain values, and equally so to brown skinned people. Like, they're about the cause, you know, they're about uplifting the Black community, and never
done that.
You know, I've had to be mindful of that. And I think part of that came from being brown and, you know, the interactions I had with folks who were not as dark as I was, and some of the things I saw them caring about, right? That didn't align with what I cared about, without deconstructing that I probably cared about what I cared about because somebody told me that that's what brown skinned people are supposed to care about. You know what I mean? Like the role of socialization in those ways. What you laughing at, Jay?
Just the way you worded it.
Yeah. So
what you were told to care about. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what socialization is, right? Like they're telling you how to be in society, how to interact with other people in society. And if you don't know to challenge that, then you carry that socialization on until you're really willing to break that cycle.
Finish your thought, sorry.
So, but you know, it has taken more intentionality to break that. And these kind of conversations are helpful for us as a friend group. And I'm hoping that they're helpful for whoever is listening to at least take a second and challenge their thoughts about colorism and why they carry on that socialization norm, or why they decide to break away from it, because it doesn't really have a place, but we do have so many values and experiences and reinforcers to even bring us to this conversation as grown as women. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like in our never mind.
Almost round.
You knew I was going. You knew it was coming, right, Jay? I'm just.
And then it's a median of 40.
And then
I joined the club in a couple months.
When we hit that August, grown ass women, you know, I'm be having everybody sing to you too, because I can't sing, so it ain't gonna work.
But that's interesting you said that, LaNail, because I didn't base it off of complexion. I based it off of socioeconomic status. Yeah, I honestly can say it was never this complexion is going to be this way or this complexion is going to be that way. It was always on money. It was on where do you live? How are you dressing? You know, what's your education level? It was all social. So the same things you're saying that were done with complexion, I was doing that with status, right? I mean that I couldn't be cool with someone in a different status, but I had preconceived notions of what that individual was going to be like, what their, you know, opinions or values or what they were willing and not willing to do would be on their status in life. So, you know, it's interesting how being at the separate ends of the spectrum as far as color, right, and colorisms there's similarities, but there's differences, right? Like there's similarities in the patterns, but for different reasons. Right? So that's interesting. I never thought about it until hearing that, and it's like, yeah, I never based it on complexion because I'm adamant to not base anything on complexion because I just got tired of hearing about it.
And it sounds like it wasn't safe for you once you came out of that, right? So it wasn't a safe conversation to always have, probably outside of people who were not the same complexion as you, because there was relatability and similarities. Let's go ahead to the last topic, right? Around protecting Black women. So we had the incident on Sunday with Will Smith and Chris Rock. And I think it went right through the community. And then I was watching, Megs had CNN in her lounge today. Child, her lounge.
Her lounge. Where's the lounge?
Child, she upstairs. She made that extra bedroom her lounge. It's cute, but I can only go in there with permission.
I love it.
I be trying to tell her she can't go into the altar room without permission, but that ain't fair, right? Every time I say it, something happening, the ancestors get on me. I guess she's supposed to be in there. But then I was watching CNN today, and these two women, white women, were talking about it from the perspective of the Oscars, and they were like, there was nothing that Chris Rock did that deserved that kind of assault. And I just had to walk away because my position has been so controversial to everybody else's, where I'm like, but I want to hear from y'all. What do you all think? I think Yanni actually brought the topic up, and again, she's handling her business today, but what do y'all think about either that incident or protecting Black women, or how they all align together?
So about the incident, I understand Will's, why he did what he did and how he felt. It also seemed like he may have been on the edge for some other reasons as well. And maybe that just was the straw. Or maybe he just saw his wife's face and was like, oh, hell no. Because they're probably going through who knows what, as relationships do.
And this is the second joke that Chris Rock made about Jada about the Oscars. So this wasn't the first incident. But go ahead, right. Sorry.
And so also knowing, Will is also a comedian. And so I felt like, it had to be a little deeper than that. I'm sure, his wife is going through, her stint with alopecia, and, I'm sure she's tired of thinking about it and talking about it, hearing about it, whatever. And like I said, I personally feel like something else might be going on in the background, and he felt like he had to, assert his position in her life, for himself and for his family. Maybe I do think that him hitting Chris Rock was a bit extreme. Okay. I think I would have been okay with him yelling from his seat, like, keep my wife's name out your mouth. Now they probably would have thought it was a joke. Not when he dropped the F-bomb though, twice. But
I love that word.
I do too. It tastes so good. It feels so good on the lips, right? But I don't think I think he was wrong in getting up and hitting him. I get the point. I'm kind of all over the place with this. I understand, like, in the hood, back in Philly, that's how we get down. We scrapping. You talk about my family, then I got something for you. But I just feel like, $1 billion Will is a bit. I think he could have handled that differently. I wasn't mad with his verbal outburst, but walking up and hitting him on national TV was a bit much for me. I just think he could have handled that a bit differently. Even if he took to social media or whatever. But then he's also Will Smith too, and who gonna check me? What y'all gonna do? I'm still gonna get paid. I have all the #1 movies. My money's coming regardless. So I do what I want. So I don't know. I just ultimately, I think I appreciate him protecting his wife and ultimately his family. But then that also opens up his wife and his family to more judgment and criticism and, anything. You're kind of in that business, and I know they do take a lot of, shit because of it. And it's not easy. We've lost a lot of celebrities and stuff to suicides, and I know it's not easy. More money, more problems, right?
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of processing that a little bit. I told my family I wanted to talk to them about it too over next time we do Sunday dinner. So that's all I have on the topic right now. So
Sorry. That's Sunday dinner.
Because of the Sunday dinner. No, but you know, Jonai's family has had dinner together. Jonai, tell everybody how you guys had dinner together every night.
Yeah, we grew up. We had dinner every night together. Like we sat at the table. Everybody had a turn. Setting the table. It was, everybody had a day that they set the table or wash the dishes or whatever it was. And
I love it.
If you were home, like if you didn't have a practice or a meeting or something, then you ate dinner. And if you with the family, and we all, we had a TV in the kitchen, and to this day there's still a TV in the kitchen, and we, would watch like Jeopardy or what some show, some documentary or something, and we would talk about the day, talk about the show. That's what that was like the only time we all had together, because everybody was doing their thing, moving around, just always busy. There were times where I hated it, but ultimately I loved it. And to this day, it sits with me, and it resonates in my life. I think it's super important. And if you weren't there, the table was still set for you, and the food was left in Tupperware. And when you came home, if you felt like eating, you could still eat, and the table was set for you, so you weren't forgotten. So
yeah, we did that until my sister went to college. It was the same way. I grew up like that. Like we ate dinner together. Mm-hmm. And she went to college. It was like, okay, I'm flying solo, because by the time she went to school, I was driving and just probably doing the most.
Yeah.
But my dad, it's been on my mind. So you saying that reinforces that I have to do something about it, because he's been asking me for family night, like family dinner night. Just pick a day. You're so busy. You're so this. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, he's not going to live forever. I need to do this. I need to do this because I don't want something to happen. And then I'm like, that's all he wanted was one. Mm-hmm. Right. So you saying that kind of just reinforces, that whole spirituality thing. It kind of reinforces that, okay, you need to figure that out. Maybe it's not.
It's very nice, because everybody doesn't have that. Everybody doesn't even have, a traditional family. Our friends and our families now today, but our blood family. Everybody doesn't have that, and to not take it for granted, and to actually grow up in a house where there was no drama. Nope. Like I don't know that life, like of course we got in trouble and that kind of thing, but like no drama with the parents, and no, like all my dad's family, all his brothers and sisters, we were talking about this not too long ago. I'm like, they have never, not that I know of, I have never experienced any trauma or anything like that. I do not even know that life. So that's for me to speak to it would be me being an outsider, talking about what I've seen in other people's families. So, I am lucky. Of course, we've had our issues and that kind of thing. But we all have our traumas and things that upset us, and we wish we woulda, shoulda, coulda. Wish it was different, but I think overall I've been super blessed with the family that that I was born into, and the family that I was married. My dad married into. So
no, I get it. I think we had similar upbringings in that sense, except I was not a PK. I was probably a DK, a drug turned cop, but. But I get what you're saying. It does change. Like my dad is the law. Like he's the Bible. He's the law. Like I could, normal banter back and forth, but if he comes in here, I don't care if I tell him no, because that's just, I have a rebellious spirit, I have learned. So if he tells me to do something and I'm like, nope, I don't want to hear that. I'm grown. I'm going to end up, he's like, oh, the season's changing. You should have someone, spray outside the perimeter of the house. And I'm like, no. And sure enough, like a day later, all right, I got to call somebody to do this. So, he's that. But but I want to hold up to the Jada Will thing, because speaking about my dad is speaking about the whole protecting Black women. I have never, as much as I love my father and he is the greatest person in the world to me, I have never felt fully protected by Black men. not from my first husband. So with Jordan's father, my first husband, there was consciously, and I say consciously because of course my dad is probably protecting me in many moments, but consciously where that is what I wanted and didn't necessarily get it, even though everything happens for a reason. I'm a true believer of that. So it happened and played out the way it should have. But I remember wanting my dad to come in and save the day, right, with Jordan's father, because that was an abusive situation. I wanted him to lock me up somewhere and keep me away from it if I couldn't do it myself, right? I wanted to be saved. And then obviously with husband number 2, I had to save myself, but, you know, never feeling saved by him in this, because it's not just a physical aspect of somebody hurting you, it's also protecting you emotionally and mentally and how you go out into the world and how they act around you in the world. So, and it's way too soon, or I'll say this, with current relationship, we haven't had any experiences for him to have to want to save me. I mean, I did meet the parents, so that's the whole thing. But, you know, but overall, I don't know what that feeling of a Black man came and saved me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because I also wasn't raised to need to be saved. My dad raised me to save myself. So that actually ties into why he didn't possibly save me with my marriage, because he raised me to be independent. And to be perfectly honest, I told him this other day, you raised me to be all about myself. You know,
to be all by yourself or about yourself?
About myself.
About yourself.
Right? And that's been helpful at times. It's been hurtful at others, but that's how he raised me. He raised me to be independent and not necessarily need anyone for anything. And you have many downfalls, because we had a conversation about it, because my therapist said I should. And I was like, okay, but I love my dad. I don't want him to feel badly about himself. It was like, no, you're grown. It'll be okay. So I was like, all right, cool. And he understood. You know, and as a parent, I understand, right? Because we do what's best. But as far as Will and Jada, if he would have, as someone that wants to know to some extent what that feels like to be saved or have a Black man show up like that for a Black woman, the delay is what did it for me, like really well. It was there was a delay where he laughed and then got up. Right.
That's what I heard. I didn't know about that.
So it's double-sided. If he wasn't at the Oscars and this very multi-millionaire, you know, rich man in front of the world, like, let me take him out of that context and what would I think about it? Right. You know, so if I take him out of the celebrity limelight, it was the pause. It was the pause for me that I was like, really, why you pause? Like, if he would have said it, get up and walk, but you, ha, 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 ha. Oh shit, my wife's mad. Okay, let me go do something. Now,
okay.
Case, because some people, like me, if I'm really, really mad, I tear up. Some people laugh. So he could have been processing, right? So who knows, right? Who knows what he was going through? But because he's a celebrity, so you know, it puts it in a different light. To your point, now you have the world looking, and celebrities don't get to live by our rules. It's not fair. It's not. But the cancel culture is real. And I get that he's Will Smith and he's very paid, but cancel culture is a real thing right now with the internet that is undefeated. So, you know, if he wasn't a celebrity, would he have been wrong except for the pause? No, I don't think he would have been wrong. But because he's a celebrity, I was like, and I thought about this before. I was like, you know, part of me wants to say I'm indifferent because I don't know. Like, is that what I want you to laugh at the joke and then get up and then punch him?
That's so I do wonder how Jada actually feels about it. Like, is she kind of on both sides of it? Like, okay, that's my man, but okay, but you know, I was irritated, but it wasn't that serious. Like, okay, you know,
the joke didn't seem. The joke seemed like he's a comedian. Do you know at Oscars they have said insensitive, disrespectful, like it's almost like you kind of expect them to do that. Now that doesn't mean that she shouldn't have been, you know, protected, but I also don't know the dynamics of their relationship. So I think that's what also ties into the whole consistency is it, or boundaries, are they consistent or dependent upon, situational, where their relationship may be defined in a way where if she's the aggressor in a relationship and she's the more dominant personality, is that something he's ever really had to do for her? Right? Because sometimes when women are dominant, men tend to think they don't need them and they don't need them to show up that way. Right? And so, case in point, how I was raised, it's only until recently where I've had to be a certain level of vulnerability in some situations. And even to this day, husband number 2 still didn't get the vulnerability he probably could have gotten, and he won't, right? Because it got to a point where nobody's going to protect me because of what I learned from my past experience. I'm going to protect myself in deuces. And you can't, it's hard to protect yourself and be vulnerable, right? It's hard to be both, because how am I vulnerable and protect myself? You almost have to be okay with a certain level of hurt to be vulnerable, right? Because you're open to whatever you get back from the other person, and you just have to accept it and process. Protecting Black men has taken on a different meaning now because of how we've had to protect ourselves. So now me protecting myself is, I'm not going to be vulnerable until I'm in a position to be able to emotionally handle what comes from it. That's how I protect myself, right? It's not that you can't have the conversation, but I have to be ready, right? I can't have the conversation and not be ready, and now I'm all over the place in a hot mess, Yeah.
I think I relate to that. My daddy was, I do think my daddy rescued me. I think about what I was experiencing as a young person living in the house with my mom. And that was probably the place where I needed the protection from, right? And at some point, my dad realized the degree of what was going on, in addition to his girlfriend at the time, who I absolutely love and still love. And yes, he did. He came in and he saved me, right? Like, I don't know where I would be if my daddy wasn't like, you leaving California and you coming to live with me in Korea, and we gonna do this by ourselves. And eventually he made the decision to be a single father in the 90s, which was not common. And not that should be celebrated any differently. It was just uncommon, because we don't celebrate Black single moms the way we celebrate Black single dads. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole patriarchal issue there. But anyways, my dad, he went against the norm in deciding to raising his daughter independently. He did the right thing. And so he was my model for saving me, and still is. There's still times where, my dad's this big muscular guy, and there's times, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but there's times where I could go to my dad and just lay on his chest and know that I am okay. And he doesn't have to say anything, and he doesn't have to do anything. But what he's given me in that moment is the strength to go back, right? To go back and figure something out. And so he's always protected me in those ways. I do wish that he would have protected me from my mom when younger than when he did it, but I don't think he knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. So I do appreciate protection. I was in an abusive situation years ago, maybe like 16, 17 years ago. And the way that my kid's father showed up for me was very much protective. Like, this is not going to happen. He was not the one who was abusive. It was somebody else. And he showed up for me in a very protective kind of way. And really, aside from those two incidents, who are men that are still primary in my life and will continue to be primary in my life based off of the relationships that we have, aside from that, I don't think I've ever felt protected by any man. And most of my protection as a Black woman has come from my friends, where they're like, nah, B, like, nobody's gonna talk to you like that. Nobody's gonna do that to you. And I could be rather defensive myself. I am absolutely a protector when it comes to my friend groups. So even extending this idea of protecting Black women, maybe it doesn't always come from men. Sometimes it comes from women. Sometimes it comes from friends. Sometimes it comes from family. I just don't think it happens enough. I still don't think it happens enough where I could label out when I felt protected means that it wasn't a common experience for me. It was an exception to the rule, right? Yeah. And so that to me makes me sad. That makes me sad that this is even a conversation when we never hear things like, you got to protect the white women, because people die.
You're the most protected.
People die. People die in 2022. People die from looking at a white woman the wrong way. People die from looking at a bird. They could die from looking at a bird in the proximity of a white woman, which is what we saw in Central Park, right? Like where that man could have died. Like, we don't talk about protect Asian women because that is just the norm, right? And so even the hashtag protect Black women and these things that are coming out of it, while it's empowering, it's still sad as fuck. Like that we still got to even talk about it. So when it comes to my daughter, much like my father raised me to be independent, like you mentioned, Nikki, and to protect myself and to be aware enough to protect myself, I raised Alyssa the same way, but best believe if nobody else in this world is going to protect her, she know that her mom got her. And that feels good to me, to know that she won't necessarily have to say, she won't have to list out, well, I was protected this day or this day. Her whole life has been protected, right? Like, look at my kid and we're going to have a conversation, right? Like, unless you one of the aunties, like, this not your place. So then to bring it back, because we talking today, y'all, but to bring it back to Will and Jada and Chris Rock, my position is that Will was not wrong. I don't think he was wrong at any point. Yes, I recognize that Chris Rock is a comedian, and there are limitations to every profession that we have. As a therapist, I have ethical boundaries. I have legal boundaries. Like, there are things that I cannot do, right? In working in the government, there are things you cannot do. As a soldier, there are things you cannot do, right? Like, we all have boundaries. And this idea that because he's a comedian means that he gets to not live with boundaries is one issue for me. The second issue is, if Jada was a white woman with cancer, would he have even dared make the same joke? Black people joking on Black people, that's a thing, right? Like joning, whatever we call it, right? Like cracking, whatever we call it, it's a thing. But when somebody has a health issue that is affecting them, I don't think it's appropriate to joke, right? Then she's been open about what she's been going through and the implications on her mental health. So that's the third reason why I didn't think it was appropriate. The fourth reason is, this dude did a whole damn documentary on Black hair. His daughter was the one who asked him questions about Black women and their hair. And you decided that in that moment, of all the hundreds of people that's in that audience, that's the one you wanted to focus on? Like, the Black woman suffering with a hair issue that you have done research and put your own money into? I was just like, there were four main reasons to me where Chris Rock was wrong. And Will could have slapped him 4 times for each one, as far as I was concerned. He could have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, then I'd have been like, all right, cool. So I hate that the emphasis is put on Will as opposed to the emphasis being put on Chris Rock. And Chris Rock should have protected Jada, not necessarily just Will, right? There were many people in that audience. He didn't have to go for a Black woman in that moment. He could have went anywhere else. Or if he went for a Black woman, it could have been about something that she also found to be funny or could have laughed at. But we know how we feel about our hair, our edges, our bald spots, when we're thinning. Like that, to me, there's just some things that's not funny. And being a comedian don't give you permission to make fun of something that's not funny. If it was cancer and she was bald because of cancer, we'd all been like, Chris, you an asshole. But because she's Black and it's alopecia, we're like, Will was wrong.
If she was white and it was alopecia, would you have been okay with it?
Nope, I wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't be so passionate because, you know, I'm a little bit more passionate about Black people because I don't think that Black people get protected enough in general. So I tend to protect those who have been marginalized. But no, it still was wrong to me. It was a health issue. Like you can't joke on somebody's health issue. Like that's like, remember when everybody was making fun of Chadwick for losing all of that weight? Come to find out he had cancer. Like, come on, man. That's not okay. He's over here battling for his life, and we acting like his body weight is what we should be talking about. No, he's a young Black man dying of cancer. Why don't we talk about why there's not enough money and resources and research put into cancer? Like, why don't we talk about that? But okay,
at that time though, nobody knew he had cancer, right?
No, they just saw him losing weight, but they didn't know. I mean, sure, somebody probably knew, but maybe it wasn't out.
Yeah.
Bro, I forgot the Ma Rainey movie that he did. They knew then because I think he was getting treatment on set and stuff, and he was getting sick. That was the last movie he did, and it was a pretty good movie too. Yeah, for that one. But I'm gonna go back to I'm indifferent. Like I don't, and I say I'm indifferent as far as who's right and who's wrong. Where it's like if he wasn't a celebrity, okay, nigga, you probably shouldn't have waited as long to smack him.
But remember that it was a joke before that, right? So it's
from
hard
like
to
when he hosted some years ago, right?
Yeah, but I'm even talking about in that moment. What we saw were cameras moving, right? So in that moment, he could have been laughing at the previous joke, and it registered when he turned to look at Jada, right? Yeah,
because of the camera.
And then sometimes you don't know that somebody needs protection until it's a visible sign that they need protection.
Looked at her face and she was like,
right. Like, so I give him grace, and I don't think that much time passed. I think it happened relatively quickly. Maybe it was a key high turn, look, get up, smack the shit, right? And I'm not one promoting violence because before the recording, I did mention that there are times when you have to defend yourself and you have to defend yours. And if Will was a white man, we wouldn't even be having this damn conversation. And if Jada was a white woman, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be like, that man crazy as hell, and move on.
Who's suing who? They just be suing each other. But you know, the Oscars, whatever Academy, whatever it is looking into the whole thing now. And they're like, we're going to punish him. But again, I'm going to say this because now you touched on a point. I wrote a whole research paper on this in undergrad because I was a comm major on how darker Disney does it. You know, the darker complexions and darker. So I'm also going to blame the media because what gets put out there. So I don't have these social media apps on my phone, but I can see it through like Instagram, through like the internet. Like if I just go to www.instagram, it'll come up and I see stuff. And I'm looking at the narrative, right? The narrative of the memes, the posts, the blogs, like the narrative is also, to your point, LaNail, pushing towards Will being wrong. It's pushing towards that. So the media has a big role to play in this. Is what, hi, D.
Work calls, I have to go.
I get it. I figured it was a work call. The media is playing this also. With that narrative. So, but the media has had a role to play in every major civil rights movement. You know what I mean? Every major movement, the media has a role to play in it because a lot of times people would speculate with, police brutality that was publicized. It was put on TV. So people had to watch it. They were forced to be confronted with it. Otherwise, it was like, oh, okay, I see it, but I get to keep moving. I get to ignore it. But you're forced, it's pushed in your face, and it creates a narrative. It creates a storyline which sometimes doesn't work in our favor. Because to your point, LaNail, nobody is talking about in multitudes, he was protecting Jada. He was protecting him, and Chris should have done the same as a Black woman. Nobody's saying that. They're talking about whether Will was wrong. They talk about, well, he wasn't smacking August Alsina. Why would he? They had an open marriage. Why would he smack him? That's something he don't care about, right?
Well, even if so, there are parts I don't disagree with any of you all. again, I think it was just the physical part of it for me. I think he should have said what he said. I don't know that he should have gotten up and smacked him. Now, to comment on you saying, you know, people saying something about why didn't you smack August Alsina or whatever. That was then though. We always hope we don't let people change, or we don't let people grow. So maybe he did want to smack August Alsina because maybe it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. It also seemed like, you know, he was doing that for Jada. It didn't seem like it was something that he actually wanted, but who knows, right? Who really knows?
And maybe he did smack him and it wasn't on international TV.
It wasn't
maybe it wasn't on international TV. But also, maybe he wasn't thinking in that way then. Maybe he was hurt. And maybe, you know, he couldn't process it in that way.
Combination of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But my point is just that, you know, who cares what you didn't do before? Today, this is how I feel. And this is what happened because of different conversations and stuff that me and my wife had. And, you know, she's in a vulnerable space, and which puts me in a vulnerable space. And, you know, again, we don't know what they're going through, you know, otherwise that could have led him to do what he did.
But how many arguments do you have that are intense or heated that are always because of that trigger alone? Like, how many really intense, emotional, high emotion arguments do we have at this stage in life that are just because of that moment and not something else that has either built up to that moment or is opened up because of the trigger of that moment? Like, once you reach a certain stage in life and you have these experiences, I could easily see if he reacted that way because of a buildup. Who knows what was going on, what the day-to-day is in their relationship. Like, who
she could have said, you never stick up for me.
Or she could have had a conversation with him at home and been like, man, we going front stage on these Oscars. I hope don't nobody talk about my bald head, because I'm coming out here to support you, because you my man, and you out here making this good movie, and you celebrating Richard Williams and his daughters, and I'm gonna stand by you because you mine, right? And I'm gonna stand by you because it's gonna draw more attention if I don't. But I'm feeling real insecure in this moment, and I just hope that nobody says anything about me, because I boycotted 2016 Oscars and it was a whole thing, and now I'm coming up here. I just hope nobody says anything. And he's like, okay, baby, I got you. Like, we, again, to the point, we don't know what happened behind the scenes. And yes, we know what happened in public, and then Black people are like, whenever we take a step forward, we always taking 2 steps back. And I'm like, what kind of bullshit is that? Like, that's actually not the case. I don't feel that way. And why do we always hold ourselves to those kind of standards? At what point do we get to just be regular, right? Like, at what point do we just let that be 2 men having a issue, right? Because one man said something he shouldn't have said. White men kill people. Or I'm gonna keep going back to the fact that white women, anything happen to a white woman, and everything shuts the fuck down. Something happened to a Black woman, we making excuses, we're deflecting, we're making it about this, we're making it. No, all of that is wrong. The woman says she's not doing well emotionally and physically. Leave her the fuck alone. That's my whole position. And I ain't even had no white Zinfandel. Straight tea. That's where I'm at.
And you think, and so you think, do you think he needed to prove that point and he needed to do it in front of everybody? Or do you think
because the embarrassment was in front of everybody. The issue was in front of everybody. You have an issue in front of everybody and then we handling this behind the scenes? No. You handle it right now in this moment. I don't give a care about nothing else. Like, and what they gonna do?
I get it. Like, I get it. I don't know if that would have been me. I definitely feel like there would have been an outburst. Like the comment, I would have said something if it hit me. But
that would have been perceived as wrong too, Jay. Anything Will would have done in that moment would have been perceived as wrong. If he would have just said, "Keep my white name out your mouth." But then you don't go to jail, though. You don't possibly go to jail. I mean, Will Smith ain't going to jail. I don't think so either, but who knows? But please, Chris Rock not even pressing charges. Like,
well, I know he's not, because they're also friends, I think. Or they cool enough to not press charges. I'm sure there's a conversation that was had afterwards. I'm pretty sure. Now, I don't know if anything will ever be the same, but I can imagine that Chris Rock probably tried to plead his case, like, oh, you know, I didn't mean any harm. And I'm sure, I hope that Chris Rock did some sort of apologizing, to that family for, I don't think he didn't intend to hurt her feelings. And so I'm sure he tried to make that, known.
Yeah, I'm certain of it too. I guess it just continues. It is a conversation that we get to, continue to have. I think about Deuce and Alyssa and the ways that Deuce shows up for Alyssa. She also doesn't have to question whether her brother has her back, right? When
he damn sure was carrying those drinks at that Howard homecoming, and that's before he had his growth spurt. He was like, I'm gonna carry all these drinks for my ladies.
Oh.
Sidebar. Sorry, y'all. I had to bring some light. It was getting heated.
It was, right? Dude, you know how Deuce feel about his. I'd be like, okay, because he don't really like people. So when he likes somebody, he down. He gonna take care of them. We've been on here for about over an hour and a half. I'm sure whomever has been listening consistently been like, okay, y'all just talking. But you know what? I loved our grown-ass women today because it was so intentional. Our other ones have been intentional too, but these ones, we had like 3 main heavy topics that we wanted to like kind of cover, whether it was religion or spirituality and love and life, or whether it was colorism and our own personal experiences and what it means to us, are ending on protecting Black women. And I'm glad that we are a friend group and we can protect each other and hold each other accountable and do what we have to do to show up in this world that won't always protect us. At least there's safety in, friend groups. Real quick, going back to those who are listening and had questions around the colorism conversation, there's 3 books that I've read in recent months. Raceless, the book by Elaine Weltenworth, that's the second book, and The Personal Librarian, the book is written about the personal librarian to J.P. Morgan, who created J.P. Morgan's library, it's a phenomenal book. And in order to create, and J.P. Morgan's library ended up getting donated to New York. So it is now part of the New York City Public Library System, which we know is one of the most renowned library systems in the world. And part of it is because of J.P. Morgan's contribution after his death. And she was a Black woman who was passing. She could only do the work that she was able to do because people thought she was white. And subsequently, she was never able to get married or have children because of the risk that her children would give away her race by coming out and being dark. Raceless was about a woman who looked Black, but both her parents were white. Her mom, they're in Europe, and again, both her parents look white, and she's browner than everybody else in her community and not sure why. And come to find out, her mother had an affair with a Black man shortly after she was married. And neither parent ever addressed the fact that she was Black. So even her father never addressed the fact that she wasn't biologically his. So what it meant to grow up without racial anchors. So she never knew how to be Black, but the world treated her as she was Black. And so that was another phenomenal book. And then Elaine Weltenworth, who was the editor of Teen Vogue and pushed Teen Vogue to start having conversations about race. And she's the one who changed the face of beauty for teenagers through her advocacy work and her intentionality around who was showing up on covers and who was making those shoots. So going back to the colorism conversation, so anybody who's interested in exploring more about colorism in the Black communities, those are 3 books that were phenomenal. All 3 can be found at Target too. Not that we are sponsored by Target, but they should sponsor us. But just saying what those are. So I think maybe we should wrap it up because we've been talking and maybe our throats are a little dry. No? Okay. I'm with water. Mm-mm. But I want, for you guys to end up saying whatever it is that you want to say, and then we could wrap up. Any last thoughts or comments or questions or things we should talk about next time? I mean, we got a group chat, so we'll figure it out anyway, but what's good, y'all?
Well, I missed a large portion because we're called. Gotta be an adult. It's unfortunate sometimes. You just talked about, and I've heard you talk about this book before, and the librarian.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when you talked about how she did not have children because the race would be evident or could be evident once she had those children, the word legacy and what that means kind of dropped in my spirit, if you will. We were talking about spiritual stuff and how we look at our legacy. And what is your legacy? Is this your children? Is it your body of work you leave on earth? So that's maybe something we could explore another time.
Yeah, that's been powerful too, as I've been thinking about because we could talk about that because we're in our 40s now, and there's so much conversation amongst our age group about women and motherhood, and women who are mothers or women who are not mothers by choice, and then women who are not mothers by circumstance, and all of that, right? And how do you pass legacy on? And it's so relevant again because we're in our 40s, and now people are telling us that there's no more time. I mean, I don't have a uterus, so I ain't having no more kids, but but what does that mean? Let's do that, D. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Jay and Nick, y'all got anything closing? Or y'all just good to go and we just ending? What we doing?
I'm good to go.
Okay, we good to go. All right, so for people listening to us, thank you again for hanging out with these grown ass women, and I hope you came and saw us on video too, because we cute, baby. It is Friday and we cute.
Let me give it all to them.
Ooh,
Ow.
Gave it all.
Okay.
We're corporate from the neck up, but below.
Minute. Birthday,
right.
Have somewhere to go. Okay.
Ooh.
Yes.
You look good, girl. Shit, you don't want me to stand up because my jeans don't match my shirt.
Nan.
So thank you for joining us and these grown as women. And again, a shout out to our own D, who has a birthday coming up just next week. And super excited about it. So let's do this again, I guess, in a few minutes when we get on our group chat. But for everybody else, let's do this again in the next couple of months as well. Happy spring. And you grown ass women, y'all know I love y'all. Yes. So that's it for us. Bye.
Bye.